What's up, everybody? Welcome to video 4. My name is Brett, and we are working through 5 questions that we want to answer about our students to help make their faith personal. Do you know my name? Do you know what matters to me? And then today we're talking about the question, do you know where I live? In the story we talked about in video 1, Jesus went to Zacchaeus' home. Jesus took time to enter Zacchaeus' everyday context. He even asked to go to his home, even though it was risky. It clearly didn't go over well with some people, and there was a risk to this choice, but it was truly incarnational. Jesus entering the world of Zacchaeus, and because of that, we see the impact that it had. So the question we want to ask ourselves is, do we know where our students live? Now, there's a lot of different facets to this one, some more obvious than others, so hang with me. First of all, we want to know where they live physically. This has to do with their home, their family dynamics. If you're familiar with Lead Small, there's a principle called partnering with parents. And it's probably one of the most powerful but least used principle in leading small groups. Deep diving into the importance and the how-tos of partnering with parents would be a whole other set of videos, but let's just put it this way. As a small group leader, you're going to have roughly 40 hours of influence each year in the lives of your few. But their parents, about 3,000 hours. So yes, what you do matters, but what happens at home matters more. So when we partner with the parents of our few, when we know them, their family, we gain their trust. And when we communicate well, the combined influence is far greater than just the two on their own. So beyond partnering with their parents, beyond their physical home, we also want to know where they live socially. Who are they hanging out with? Who's paying attention to them? I once heard someone say that students don't choose their friends. They either feel accepted or they don't. So teenagers often just end up running in the circles they've always run in, or the circles where they feel most accepted. Obviously, we don't need a list of their closest friends, but it is beneficial for us to pick up on the names that they throw around when they talk about their weekend plans, and when we start to notice if those names start to change. So we want to know where they live physically, we want to know where they live socially, and we also want to know where they live digitally. Social media, phones, video games, digital life encompasses so many platforms right now. The reality is these things aren't good or bad, they're just powerful. And we have to help them navigate. But how do we make sure that we know who's in their world, their digital world? Obviously, their social media is a huge way to know where they live digitally. Is who they seem to portray themselves to be on social media the same as who they portray themselves to be at church? How do you interact with them digitally? Now, a quick tension that I want to recognize with social media is not really knowing what to say or what to do sometimes. But I will say that there's probably not a quicker way to get blocked by them on social media than preaching to them or than shaming them in the comments of some of the things that they post. But their digital life is such an important part of their life right now, and we have to know and understand, how do they spend their time digitally, even if they're not on social media? How are they spending their time digitally? What YouTube videos are they watching? What are they looking for? What are they trying to do? What kind of games are they playing? What does their digital life look like? Up next is that we want to know where they live culturally. Now, to be a good small group leader, you don't have to watch all their shows. You don't have to listen to all their music. You don't have to be on all of their social media platforms and use all of their slang. However, there is a level of cultural competency that really is required. Now, don't pretend to be someone you're not. And don't be afraid to ask questions about what something means or what in the world they're talking about. But the more that you have a pulse on the culture they live in, the easier it's going to be for you to get personal with them and, like last time, understand what matters. Next up is that we want to know where they live emotionally. Our emotions are powerful, and they can often steer us in some wrong directions and create some really unhealthy patterns when we're not aware of them. And when we're in our teenage years, our emotions are really powerful and they're all over the place. And so what does their family of origin have to do with their emotional health? Are they in a home where opinions are expressed and they have a voice, or they talk about their feelings? Or maybe they're in a home that is more subdued or encouraged to keep emotions to yourself. Do your students seem emotionally present, absent, or just completely emotionally saturated? When we pay attention to the details and we recognize where students live emotionally, we're far more equipped to help them filter those emotions and to process them. And we learn where students live emotionally by showing up on a regular basis, paying attention to the subtle clues, and really getting to know their family dynamics. All right, up next, we want to know where they live developmentally. Now, if we look at a 6th grader and a 12th grader, you can tell they are both physically different. But too often, we kind of just assume that development has more to do with maturity. They're less mature or they're more mature, but there's so much more happening than that. See, middle schoolers think like engineers, and high schoolers think like philosophers. That has to do with their brain development. They might be more mature or less mature than the people their age, but their brains are still developing in a general sense in the same way as they move through their teenage years. Really understanding what's happening at each phase would be a whole other set of training too, but as we start each new year with our few, I'd encourage you to do some research about what is happening in their emotions, physically, socially, developmentally, and brain-wise in that year of our few so that we can be more prepared to lead better. Again, this isn't just a maturity thing. This is a brain development thing. The kinds of conversations that we try to have with them, the kind of questions that we ask them when we're trying to help them process, they should look different based on where our students are developmentally. Knowing where they are developmentally also helps us to right-size our expectations. All right, as we wrap up, a few more thoughts with this idea of knowing where they live. Because when we enter into the world they live in, there are some key things that we need to respect. Number one, we need to respect their personality. Introvert, extrovert, Enneagram 3 or Enneagram 9, INTJ, they're a high I, they're blue, they're an otter, a network profile. I'm telling you, if there's an assessment out there, I've taken it. While it can be really helpful for us to know how we're wired, students are usually just trying to figure it out. And there's still a chance that that's going to be different and change for some of them. But the reality is that you're going to tend to connect better with the students who are more like you are. So just be aware of that and be intentional about connecting with the ones that are different than you. During group times, you're going to notice that some students are way more likely to speak up than others. And you need to know the ones who you need to have more individual conversations with. You might have some that you can say, hey, I know you don't speak up much in group, but it really seems like you're processing a lot. What are you thinking about? So pay attention, be aware, and respect their personalities, even if they're different than yours. The number two thing to respect is respect their journey. Who has changed their mind about something since they were a teenager? Yeah, probably all of us. Who here has changed their mind about someone? Yeah, for sure. As someone who's been teaching to students or in settings like this for over 15 years, I cringe when I go back and read or hear some things from 10 years ago sometimes. And while we may wish that we have the power to move a student 30 steps forward in their faith, we just don't have that power. And so it's important that we respect where they are in that journey and do everything we can to help them take that one next step. This is one of the hardest things to me when it comes to leading. See, ministry is messy, and we get in situations where we hear a student say something that we disagree with, or we think is wrong, or we want so badly to correct. But we have to be careful about trying to fix a piece about their faith or their journey that just isn't ours to fix. Again, that doesn't mean we can't ask good questions. That doesn't mean that we can't help them process why they think that way. But we have to be careful to remember our role in all this. So take your time, don't push too hard, don't get too discouraged if they're not taking the kind of steps that we really wish that they would take. Because if we look back at our faith journey when we were teenagers in middle school and high school, we'd probably have a little bit more empathy for where they are if we truly understood. What you're doing matters, but we might not see how much it really matters in their journey until later in life. So, do you know where I live? This is such an important piece in making ministry personal with your few. It has to do with where they are physically, but it's so much more than that too. So this week, what can you do to understand just a little bit better about where your few live so that you can help make their faith personal to them?